name is Andrew Schneider. I'm president of Logan Square Preservation. Some of you might have heard this speech already, but I'll do my best to class it up a little bit this time. Logan Square Preservation is a neighborhood group. We've been around for plus or minus 40 years. We do a lot of mundane things a lot of people take for granted. We're going to plant about $25,000 worth of trees this year. We helped the city pull up the concrete right in front of the church here and turn it into grass. And this is just stuff we do in the square. We organized about a dozen businesses to contribute money so that the square is cleared of snow after every snowfall each year. So we do a lot of important work. We do that all volunteer. So if you're interested in joining Logan Square Preservation, you can get one of these little nifty buttons memorializing the Illinois Centennial Monument. That's all downstairs, as is our historic book. So that's downstairs. I want to take one other moment to tell you about the place we're standing, the Minnekirken, or the Norwegian Lutheran Church. It's been here for over 100 years. It's the only church in our landmark district that is a protected landmark church, and this is their second community meeting in just 6 months. So that means their volunteers are here turning the lights on, turning the heat on, and making sure we're all comfortable. And they've just spent, with our help, we raised $35,000 to restore their windows. They're still doing a lot more work. If you can see through to giving a donation to them on the way out, there's a little donation jar in the back. With that said, I'm going to hand over the microphone to the candidates and to our moderator, Adie Quigg.
Hi everyone. If you just came in, my name's Adie Quigg. I'm a reporter with the Daily Line. We cover Chicago politics and government. We have our first ward candidates here, Alderman Proco Joe Moreno and Daniel Laspada. We did a coin flip. Alderman Moreno gets the opening statement. I will remind everybody, candidates are asked to answer each question within 1 minute at my discretion, an extra 30 seconds for a rebuttal. If a candidate goes over their time, they will hear the sound of the bell. Could we hear what the bell sounds like? Lovely. That's the wrap it up bell. That's more of the wrap it up bell. So please stick to it, candidates. You're asked to, if you'd like, stand when giving your opening and closing statements and answers. We have one microphone. Please be courteous in giving it up when your time is through. Alderman Moreno, you are first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Logan Square Preservation, and I want to thank the Daily Line for hosting us tonight. Very proud to be here. Joe Moreno, Alderman of the First Ward, although we're just outside of the First Ward. Our neighborhoods are interlocked. And I'd just like to say I gave a State of the Ward address a couple months ago to a community group. And the state of the First Ward is strong. I'm very proud of some accomplishments that we've worked together with, many of you in the room, that were not a reality 4 years ago. I'm going to highlight a few of those, and I'm sure more of those will come up during the discussion and the debate tonight. 4 years ago, we didn't have 160 affordable units for folks like Corny Cornelius, who's here tonight, right there, raise your hand, Corny, and others that have lived in our ward for their life that we're able to move into. We have that now because of our work together. Myself and Alderman Burnett are leading that effort. The Tribune and the Sun-Times both opine in support of the pilot program that we're doing and bringing in more and more. 4 years ago, we didn't have the second LGBTQ-friendly development going on Milwaukee Avenue, which is being built right now, right in the heart of Logan Square. 88 units, completely affordable, welcoming to our LGBTQ friends. The first one was in Lakeview. Ours will be the largest. 4 years ago, we didn't have the police increase and the crime reduction that we have now. We have more and more police here. The 12th district, that covers about half the ward, was just rated as the lowest crime district in the city and the highest decrease in crime. That didn't happen 4 years ago. It happened with your efforts and working with me. Our schools 4 years ago, 9 of our 13 public schools are level 1 or level 1 plus. That wasn't there 4 years ago either. And it's not just about me. I moved here 22 years ago out of college. I moved to a ward that's diverse. I moved to a ward that has socioeconomic folks at all spectrums and ethnicities of all spectrums. So I don't care if you've been here your lifetime, 20 years, or you just want to move in. You're welcome in the First Ward because diversity is our strength. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Laspada, and I'm running for First Ward Alderman. I've been in our city for 20 years now and been in the neighborhoods of the First Ward for the last 13 years, fighting for the issues that we hold in common, that everyone deserves an affordable home, that everyone deserves a school that is well-resourced, that everyone deserves to be able to walk down their sidewalk and down their alley unafraid. 4 years ago, the First Ward had thousands more units of affordable housing. 4 years ago, our schools had hundreds more students. This is a direct result of the displacement of thousands of families from our community. But 4 years ago, I also made the decision that I needed to set on the path towards running in this race. And that was because a lot of us remember when the Mika Towers down the street from us were going up. We remember community meetings that didn't feel deliberative. And so the people in this room, and I see a lot of them here, collected over 3,000 petition signatures. Not saying that we demand it be this tall or this dense or this affordable. We said, give us one more truly deliberative participatory community meeting. And I remember going into the alderman's office with many of you, handing those over and seeing them set aside as if they were the phone book, and being told, thank you for your time and efforts, but the deal is already done. And then we were able to look online and see the thousands of dollars in campaign contributions that had traded hands between that developer and our alderman. And that is a corrupt leadership style that the First Ward cannot afford. We cannot afford leadership that makes too many people feel bullied and berated. It's time for a new vision.
Alderman Moreno, according to figures from Chicago Cityscape, Logan Square saw the highest number of teardowns in 2017, with 109 demolition permits issued. According to DePaul's Institute for Housing Studies, vulnerable populations in these communities are likely undergoing increased housing cost burden or active displacement, and proactive planning is essential to preserving affordability and neighborhood diversity. What should that planning look like?
Great question, thank you. Couple things I didn't really hear what my opponent wanted to do, but I did hear what he said I did, which you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. And the facts are this. The facts are this, the handout is given to you. We lead the city in bringing in affordable units. Lead the city. Number 2, and we'll be number 1 soon. We've put $80 million into our schools in the last 8 years, which does not include another $12 million that I have allocated through TIF money and through menu money to schools like Chase that are here where CPS wanted to build a parking lot and we wanted a playground. And I allocated the dollars for that. My daughter went to preschool at Diego School where we built a $400,000, they had a dilapidated field there, and a $1.5 and $3.5 million fields at Wells and Clemente. Clemente is doing much better than it's ever done. Go visit Clemente if you haven't yet. Much better than it's ever done. The one thing that I've done on this is if you live by the 606, I myself brought $1 million program for you to go get a $25,000 forgivable loan. It's a grant to help fix your house up so you can stay in our neighborhoods. And that's real progress. We can hold signs and talk outside and protest. But if you want results, I'm your candidate. Thank you.
Same question.
So,
Same
to be
question.
clear, the question was about the demolition of housing in Logan Square, correct?
What should the planning process look like for preserving affordable housing?
Okay, thank you so much, because the response was confusing. So it is true that we have, if you go to Logan Square, we are number 1 in the demolition of housing citywide. Number 2 is another neighborhood of the First Ward, it's Westtown. And the damage is not only in our built environment, the aesthetic of our community, but it's in the loss of housing that is affordable without subsidies. We can see that even if you look at federal rental data, we've lost about 800 units of 2-flat rental housing since 2011 in this ward. A year and a half ago, Logan Square Neighborhood Association, Lucha, other community groups collaborated on an ordinance that would have created a fee for the demolition of housing in our community, and then the funds from that fee would go into a community-controlled fund that would then help with rehabilitation, property tax relief, the things that help homeowners stay in the community. Our alderman was asked to lead on that. A year and a half later, it has not come up for a vote. And we can talk about whether the fee level is right. We can talk about whether an alderman should sit on the board that governs that program. But we can't argue about the fact that the demolition rate of properties in our community is out of hand. And we cannot afford to keep going in this direction. Thank you.
Mr. LaSpada, the first question, this next one is for you. Block clubs, neighbors, and community groups sometimes rally to save a historic structure from being torn down. What are some ways the communities can best work with you on saving historic buildings? This is for Mr. LaSpada first, and then Alderman Moreno to follow.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that community groups are going to look at from me is trust. How do we establish trust? I think I established that by keeping the promise that I started at the beginning of this campaign, which was that I would not and will not in the future take campaign contributions from developers. Because otherwise, how can you trust me to be a fair arbiter of what is the right path for development in our community? Now, the second thing is for each one of those properties, those historic properties that bring character, that create the history of our neighborhood, is really having a deliberative, consistent community process that is democratic, where we plan out how to balance preservation and development together. It's going to take a team effort, but I think it has to be a very inclusive process. I want to make sure that everyone feels like they are a legitimate actor and a legitimate voice in the process that helps Logan Square develop in fair and equitable ways over the next 4 years.
Alderman Moreno, same question for you.
Sure. I want to answer the development question. Daniel, you better check your contributions. Your largest contributor, you know what he does? Tears down houses, like you talked about, kicks the people out, and puts new people in there. That's what no. Listen, look at your largest contributor. So the hypocrisy that comes from someone like this, call it is like it is. I have a very, very, very thorough community process. West Bucktown Neighborhood Association, Greater Gertrude Neighborhood Association, Wicker Park Committee, East Village Association, Eckerd Park Community Council, Chicago Grand Neighborhood Association. All of those, some represented here, review every single zoning change that I do, and 90+% of the time, we agree. Nobody agrees 100% of the time. No one. But we agree 90% of the time. We have a very thorough process. When we had Mika Towers, he talked about Lucha. All of the affordable groups, the ones that have been here 30, 40 years, wrote letters of support. Lucha, Hispanic housing, people that are doing affordable housing way before you got to this neighborhood. Those are the people that I'm going to rely on, and that's how we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Alderman Moreno, this one's for you as well. This is my aldermanic prerogative question. Critics say the power of Chicago City Council members to maintain control over their wards by initiating or blocking city council or city government actions has exacerbated the city's legacy of racial segregation and kept affordable housing developments out of mostly white wards. But aldermen also need to be responsive to their constituents. How can city council change the culture of aldermanic prerogative while still representing what their constituents
Absolutely.
want?
On this chart, I think, tells a tale of two cities. Myself and Alderman Burnett account for more than the rest of the wards combined in bringing affordable units. And there are only 22 wards on here because the rest haven't brought any. That's the tale of two cities right here. And my friend John Arena is fighting that fight right now. And that's why if you take away aldermanic prerogative, hopefully they'll have policies like I've adopted with my groups that I mentioned before. No one in the first ward, no developer pays out of the responsibility to build affordability on site, period. And not only do we do it to 10% and 15, we've pushed it to 20%. Myself and Alderman Burnett leading the city. If every alderman did that, I don't think we need to get rid of aldermanic prerogative. But let me answer one thing about prerogative we've got to be careful about. If you give that power to the executive branch and a bureaucracy downtown that's not elected decides the zoning in your ward, we're going to have challenges that other cities do, like LA. Okay? So there's some benefits, but it's been abused, and we have to get rid of that abuse. And I hope some of the other aldermen take a look and show that diverse, affordable neighborhoods work and are strong for everybody. And that's why I'm proud to lead on it. Thank you.
It's good to talk about aldermanic prerogative because the alderman here brought up one of my largest campaign contributors, a gentleman who owned a property in Wicker Park, and when the alderman disagreed with his business decision, the alderman used aldermanic prerogative to downzone a 9-unit mixed-use development to that of a single-family home. This is the kind of abuse of aldermanic prerogative that we see in a lot of ways across this city, and we can't stand for that. It's good to maintain a power like that so that the community ideally has control over how it develops. But the value of alderman prerogative only goes as far as the quality of the alderman. You need to know that your alderman is going to have a truly inclusive process around how we approach each zoning change. It's great to have invested community groups, but I want to make sure that whether you call yourself a member of GGNA or West Bucktown Neighborhood Association, as strong and valuable as they are, your voice is legitimate. You have the right to participate in our community process on any zoning development happening around you. And so we need to fill that process out. I really do look to the 32nd Ward and the 35th Ward to see what an inclusive democratic process around zoning can look like. Thank you.
Mr. Laspada, this next one's for you as well. In your role as alderman, how would you broker when a community group is opposed to a new project that requires a zoning change? And what about when it doesn't require a zoning change or is out of the alderman's hands?
When the community is opposed, the alderman needs to be opposed. Sometimes it's that simple. I mean, we can have development that feels like an iterative process, which means we go back to the drawing board time and again until the community fully feels like its voice has been heard. When it is outside of my hands, it is a difficult process. You know, we really need to make sure that we're zoning and we're planning as a community for the housing, the development, the commercial needs of the neighborhood. But it goes back to, again, process, making sure that everything is grounded in our community, that it's not the person who makes the largest campaign contribution that determines what our neighborhood looks like in the long run. It is how we create an inclusive, democratic, community-based planning and then zoning process.
Alderman Moreno, same question, and could you talk about the 10% of projects that passed where the community disagreed?
Sure. I mean, there are times when you're going to disagree on this and that. I would say that to get 100% buy-in on anything is not going to happen. My opponent mentions Mika Towers, but when I have Lucha, Hispanic Housing, when I have Bickerdike, when I have the Puerto Rican Agenda, when I have the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, all of these groups supporting it, when I have GGNA, when they're all supporting it, and we have 3 open meetings with 170 people each, at some time you're a leader. You have to make a decision. And to just stick your finger in the wind and try to figure out what every single person wants is not the benefit. We wouldn't be there with Lathrop Homes if we did that. That drug for 25 years. 25 years. You know, we mentioned about the 35th Ward and the 32nd Ward, and Scott, my colleague, is here. But look at your chart. Look how many affordable units have been brought in the 35th Ward. Now that's sad. That's sad because every alderman has the opportunity to do that. And we don't have tax incentives in the city of Chicago for building affordability. What we have is the ability to give a little more density around a hard rail to help our small businesses and do those sort of things. But at the end of the day, as an alderman, you have to make decisions. And as Scott can say, who was here earlier, Alderman Wagsbeck, they're not always easy. It's tough to make decisions sometimes. And that's why I'm proud to have been alderman for the last 9 years. And I look forward to leading you for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
This next one's for you, Alderman Moreno. Do you believe that there are issues of traffic congestion in Logan Square? And if so, what is your plan to address it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We were at a community meeting, Alderman Wagsbeck and Alderman Hopkins, and the woman said, Scott had changed the way a street had moved, and he said, no one can visit any of the restaurants there because there's so much traffic. And it kind of reminded me of the Yogi Berra saying that restaurant's going to close because you can never get in there. We want people visiting our businesses. We want those sort of things. But we need alternatives. That's why I've been the biggest sponsor of Lyft and other car sharing programs. I was a lead sponsor of Car2Go. I brought more bike lanes in. I'm a huge cyclist, and bringing in bike lanes and other forms of transportation to help relieve the congestion that's on our streets. Those are the sort of things that help in terms of also none of the developments that we've done that are TOD, transit-orientated, all have bike parking inside, all have car sharing on site. I knocked on the building at this first one at 1611 Division in Ashland, and not one person had a car. Not one person. And so those sort of forward-thinking developments are what's going to help ease our traffic and congestion. But I'll tell you what, there's some longtime members here, Johnny and others, that remember when Milwaukee Avenue was empty and barren. I'm proud to see it vibrant, but I'm proud of the things I've done to relieve the congestion, and we're going to continue to do that in the next 4 years. Thank you.
So the question around congestion, to me, feels like this broader transportation question, because I see a lot of you who you drive every day to get to work. There's a lot of folks here who rely on our buses, bicycle lanes, pedestrian spaces. And what we need is a real complete streets design. And this means that regardless of how you get around, you have the safe access to the road that you need. We can think about that when we think about the future of Fullerton, Armitage, Western Avenue. We definitely need to think critically, for instance, about how congestion affects bus transportation. If you look at Active Transportation Alliance, they recently gave the First Ward a D in bus service based on reliability, bunching, congestion. We need to think critically over the next 4 years about how we plan broadly for our transportation needs. Part of that might be looking at the question that Scott was posed to about how we regulate rideshare and scooter services in this city. But I want to make sure that we are governing and planning for transportation equity. There's some things that are going to feel like fads. Scooters, some of the ideas that are being proposed. I want to make sure also, if you are a family, if you're disabled, if you're a senior, that you also have the mobility needs that you have provided for by this city. Thank you.
Mr. Laspada, how would you regulate Uber and Lyft and potentially electric scooters in the ward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because friends of mine drive for Uber and Lyft. It's a service that I use myself because, fun fact, I am not a driver in this city. But I want to make sure that those programs, as we heard, are regulated fairly because they make their profits off of our transportation infrastructure. I want to make sure, as Scott mentioned, that safety comes first. But I also want to make sure that drivers are protected. We are moving towards this gig economy in Chicago where workers are really pitted against each other, where people are working more time for lower wages and less benefits. And that is a Chicago that is unsustainable economically. So I want to make sure that Uber and Lyft also aren't just allowed to flood the market with drivers who end up competing against themselves. so that everyone is earning less at the end of the day. I also want to make sure when we talk about scooters that we, if we can, learn from the mistakes of other cities. It has been an industry that has more or less failed in most cities in America that it has come to. And we need to make sure that, as it's been in the past, it isn't the companies that are profiting who are writing the regulations at the same time. Thank you.
Same question. How would you change how Uber and Lyft are regulated, and what's your proposal
So
for
a couple
scooters?
things. As a supporter of Uber and Lyft, I have the Camarillo family next door to me, a low-income family who drive for Lyft, and I have a higher-income family to the left of me in Wicker Park that use Lyft. And so it serves a variety of purposes. My opponent mentioned the security of the scooters, my ordinance that I put in. Again, not just talking about ideas, but actually doing things. The ordinance I put in calls for the city to study scooters in other cities in here to right-size the regulations before we approve one scooter. The industry's not very happy with me because it's been about 5 months, but we want to make sure that we get it right if we do it at all. Uber and Lyft drivers provide for their families. They provide a service, as I use it, as my opponent uses it, as many in this room do. We've called for regulations, Scott and I have, in teaching them that you can't just pull in front of the street, you got to pull over to the side. I've proposed an ordinance that requires them to put mirrors on each side of their windows so they can see our bikers and our pedestrians, and those sort of things. We don't want to over-regulate, but we need to regulate. And we need to embrace the new economy, not push it away. We're not the Pony Express. That was one of the way people got around or got mail around. And we have to embrace the new economy as a tax base and as something that helps move Chicagoans around our great city. Thank you.
Alderman Moreno, this next one's for you. Do you support Elon Musk's proposed super train to O'Hare?
I mean, it sounds great, doesn't it? So Elon Musk wants to use his drill to drill underneath the blue line all the way to O'Hare and then charge more money, and then that doesn't sound great, but it's fascinating from a development standpoint, right? I don't, if you know or you've read of Elon Musk, I'm not sure that, he's a very smart man. I'm not sure he's always there. I'm not sure that it's reality. We haven't been presented with anything. We do have a blue line. We have that stops in 4 stops in the first ward. We can criticize the CTA as much as we want, and we should, but it's been improved. We've got the new blue bringing $500 million that we got from the Obama administration prior to him leaving because we were rightly concerned that this new administration wouldn't approve it. I prefer to put more money into the blue line right now than subsidizing a private developer to drill, which seems very scientific. That's what I would prefer to do. Because we want to save people time, but at what cost to Chicago taxpayers? So let's continue the new blue, and let's put more money into that so that every rider that pays $1.60, $3.20, $4.80, whatever, can ride it, and they don't have to pay $30 because they have in their pocket to get downtown in 15 minutes. That's my position. Thank you.
Same question.
Yeah, for me, there's not really a need to equivocate on this. I think it's a bad idea for Chicago. It's a distraction from the actual transit and mobility needs that our city is facing. We have residents on the south side of this city who have been waiting decades for the red line to extend down to 130th Street. Thank you. We have neighbors in the first ward who, if you get stuck on the eastern end of the Armitage bus at 7 o'clock on a Sunday, good luck finding a way home. Our bus service is what needs reinvestment. Our blue line needs reinvestment. I have no interest in catering to the innovative whims of billionaires in this country. So there are great ways that we can advance transportation mobility and equity in this city. I encourage you to go online, look at the platform that Steve Vance and Linda Lopez great Logan Square advocates have put together. A lot of mayoral candidates are signing online. Great ideas that we can implement here, but also to create equity citywide. Yes, the First Ward is a great community, but I want to be an alderman who thinks critically about the needs of Chicago as a whole, that isn't ignoring the needs of those who have been left out of mobility solutions for a very long time.
Mr. LaSpada, for a very hyper-local traffic question, how would you address, this was submitted, how would you address parking and traffic in the area of the Goethe School with all of the new residential developments in that area?
This is a very good question because we know just recently the Plan Commission approved the redevelopment at the Congress Theater, a development that is getting $10 million in your taxpayer TIF funds to create a hotel, an expanded theater, and a new residential development, all of which will have 0 parking required. And people that I'm canvassing and talking to on Tallman and Rockwell are really concerned about what the impact is going to be. If I have the opportunity, I think that is a plan that we need to revisit if we can. You cannot, regardless of how close you are to the train, create that much necessity for car traffic and not create any parking solutions. And agreed, like the generation of millennials coming up may be less car reliant. We may dress fewer miles, but most of the people I know still own cars. Whether they are parking them on the alley or on the street, they still own cars. And to ignore the impact of developments like this on parking on our streets is irresponsible.
So would you revoke its TOD status?
I think we need to work with that developer, if we have the opportunity, to help them, first of all, identify the extent of the parking needs that are actually going to be created by their development, and then require them to find the right solutions in our community. But to say that they can simply do 0 parking spaces is not a solution.
That is a fantastic development, one that I'm proud to support. You know, we talk about listening to the community. At our community meetings, a majority of the community members supported the project. A vast majority. Secondly, what was also left out is that the only reason that I allowed them or supported TIF money is because they're not going to supply 5% affordability. They're not going to supply 20% affordability. They're going to supply 30% affordable units on site in the First Ward, which will add to our total of necessary. And the first apartments above the Congress Theater will be 100% affordable. We're also going to change the street to be one way so that our trucks that used to sit outside the Congress and idle all night and bother our neighbors are going to be able to park inside into the new development. They've also reduced the amount of height to the building after several community meetings and input from people from Greater Goethe Neighborhood Association. That's a thorough community process. Now, if you don't like the outcome at the end, that's okay. But then to say that the community process wasn't effective, I find, again, as hypocritical and not leadership. That Congress Theater is going to come back as a gem that it should be, as it was back in the day, and we're going to have more people, again, like Corny Goins and Daryl Cannon living in our neighborhoods, and that's the diversity of the First Ward and its strength. Thank you.
Mr. LaSpada, what do you propose to address the issue of lead in the city's water?
We really need the comprehensive, transparent process that was brought up when Alderman Wagasback was sitting. Because I can tell you, as someone who researched this issue when I was working for Friends of the Parks, we found, like in a park like Humboldt Park, which borders the First Ward on two sides, 50% of the water fountains in that park weren't working this past summer. We have public housing residents, schools, parks that are lacking clean drinking water for their residents. So it's that transparent planning process that was brought up. It's making that data widely available and accessible to the community. And then it's working on the right partnership plan, not only to replace water mains, but to replace the service lines that are lead for a lot of us. And making sure that we partner with you, the landlord, the homeowner, on paying a part of that so that you can get those service lines replaced. It is very strange for me right now to see water mains being replaced and know that there was no plan in place for working with local property owners to get those service lines taken care of. But I think particularly for those who are most vulnerable, our students, our young people in our parks, those who live in public and subsidized housing, we have a clear plan in place to replace those service lines, to hold the CHA, CPS, and CPD accountable, and then to work with you, homeowners and renters and developers alike, on partnerships to get your service lines replaced.
And how should the city pay for its portion of the replacement?
I think it can come from state funding, from the progressive income tax that was brought up. It may come from the right progressive real estate transfer tax, although honestly, I would rather see that go towards ending homelessness in this city, which is another plan on the table. It can go towards all sorts of progressive revenue sources, whether that is working with our state on legalization of cannabis, whether it is a corporate head tax, whether it is a corporate sales tax on the services that are developing billions of dollars in wealth downtown. And there are lots of resources that I think don't just put the burden back on working families and homeowners in this community.
Again, lead and water.
Lead and water, how'd you pay for it?
So some answers besides just transparency and having a meeting. I support legalizing marijuana. I've been in the paper on that decades ago. I support a progressive income tax. I support a sales tax. I am very interested in the city income tax. But guess what, guys? I'm the alderman of the city of Chicago. We have to have Springfield, and I'm glad now, as the first alderman to endorse J.B. Pritzker, our new governor, that he's down there. Because I think that he's going to change those things. But let me tell you this. I've learned as an alderman, if you want to count on Springfield to get the work done that you should be doing, shame on you. You figure out your own ways of paying for things that we need. So, lead in our water. There is a proposal, two proposals, one that I support, a co-sponsored on the homeless issue and to end homelessness, and one on getting money towards ending lead. That would put a transfer tax on sales of homes $1 million or more. I think both those coalitions can work together. I'm a lead sponsor on both of those ordinances, can work together to get those actual dollars and not just talk about a fair process. Because talk doesn't get the lead out of the water. Talk doesn't help the children at CPS. What helps are ordinances that I've passed, like earned sick time, like minimum wage increase, like birds reparations ordinances, things that I've actually introduced, authored, and passed so that it helps folks out instead of just talking about the issue. And lead is a real issue in our city, but let's have a real solution and not just point to Springfield or point to DC, and point to yourselves as a city council and as aldermen of the city of Chicago. Thank you.
Of the ethics reforms proposed in the days since Alderman Ed Burke's court appearance, which do you support, Mr. LaSpada? Of the ethics reforms proposed in the days since Alderman Burke's court appearance, which do you support?
I support the full battery of ethics reform that has been put forward by the Progressive Caucus. We need transparency in the finances of this city. We need to take our $100 million workers' compensation fund out from under the thumb of corrupt leadership. And if I am lucky enough to be elected to represent the residents of the First Ward, I would fully support Alderman Scott Wagasback as the next chair of the Finance Committee. But broadly speaking, we need a city council that operates more independently. We cannot no longer have a city council that leaves the governing of the city up to a mayor and is willing to be just the vassal lords in their wards. We need aldermen who are independent, critical thinkers, and I do not trust for my opponent to go down that path. If you look at the report authored by Dick Simpson out of UIC, you can see that Alderman Moreno, in the last 4 years, voted 98% of the time with Rahm Emanuel. That is the rubber stamp past of the City Council that I am hoping does not follow forward into 2019. I think we are all looking for independent, critical thinking and leadership from our aldermen.
Thanks for the question specifically. Again, you are allowed to have your own opinions. I am not near the top of people that quote unquote voted for Rahm Emanuel. But when I passed the minimum wage ordinance, Rahm Emanuel was against that at first, and we had 6 or 7 no votes, and we passed that. That went on Dick Simpson's list as voting with the mayor. I'll vote with the mayor to increase minimum wage anytime. So this notion that if you vote any way, shape, or form with the mayor, you're with the mayor, is just ludicrous. And I have a record of voting against the mayor. I voted for the one thing that we can do, the one thing today that we can do, and Scott and Wagsbeck and I were on this, is vote for the full obligation of the of the Inspector General to oversee the City Council, just like they oversee every garbage person, just like they see every meter worker. Unfortunately, that ordinance that 24 of us voted for fell because Alderman Burke and the mayor worked against it. I voted for it. That is one of the biggest things that we can do, so that investigative general that has the full right to investigate any city worker, but then is limited when it comes to me, just not fair. Why am I any special or any different? The other thing that we need to do is get rid of this notion that you can represent the city and also try to get people's taxes reduced by getting paid. I think that's just a fallacy. That's why I first supported Fritz Kagi, who's endorsed me as well as our new assessor. He's going to change the old way, and those are the things that we need to do, objective things that we can do, and not just talk. Thank you for the question.
Do you oppose Alderman Moreno, do you oppose all outside employment for aldermen or simply property tax work?
I totally on property tax work. Outside employment, I would say that I'm totally open to having outside employment opposed. I actually asked a constitutional lawyer on this, and it would be difficult with the way the Constitution is written, but if we had the right ballot initiative, and if we had the right referendum that supported that, I would do that. But again, you know, what we're doing is we're nipping at the problem is that it's not, you know, you give people a bunch of rules to follow, and then if they don't follow it, what are the consequences? And right now, we don't have an inspector general that can follow up on that and can say, you're not following the rules, you're doing things wrong. And so if the ordinance that I supported and voted for, and we bring that back, that would give a lot of teeth so that we wouldn't have 3 aldermen right now that are 2 that have been indicted, 1 that's going to jail, that are sitting on the council right now. I think it would leave all of that. Bad actors are always going to be bad actors. But we have to have that oversight for the Inspector General. And I hope when we come back to the next session and when I'm there, we can lead on it and get it passed.
Mr. LaSpada, should Chicago change its current welcoming and sanctuary city policy?
I think we need to expand our welcoming and sanctuary city policy. Because I remember in my time on the board with the Logan Square Neighborhood Association meeting undocumented youth in this city. I remember the stories that they told me about the way the DACA program changed their lives, gave them hope that they had a future in this country. And it deeply frustrates me to see the leadership and the culture of fear and intimidation that is coming from our White House. But I also believe that being welcoming, that creating sanctuary, goes beyond the city saying we won't actively participate in your persecution. It goes to creating the resources that every immigrant family in this city needs, regardless of their documentation, to succeed in this city. So I think about programs like the city's landlord subsidy program, which, because it is a city fund, can actually benefit the affordable housing needs of our undocumented neighbors. I think about how do we expand educational programs, economic development programs, to make sure that you can apply, you can thrive, regardless of your documentation status in this city. We need to make sure we are creating every resource, that we treat people as equal neighbors and residents of this city. Even when it comes to, for me, like processes around democratic participation in zoning and development, I want to make sure my undocumented neighbors have a voice.
This is very personal to me, as it is to many of my immigrant children, family, friends out there. My namesake, my first name is Proko, I'm the third. Came here when he was a teenager from Mexico, undocumented. Jumped on D-Day, came home with a Purple Heart and a couple Bronze Stars. Never had a lick of alcohol before he went there, came back an alcoholic and addicted to morphine, and died in his wheelchair in a mobile home. His papers that I have framed in my office say legal or illegal, and it's marked illegal. Now, if my grandfather, and this is like many stories in this room and many others, so this is not unique, but if my grandfather can jump on D-Day and get shot at and get wounded and still be illegal, that's a problem that we still have in this country and that we're trying to change. He's as legal as anyone else. We've done things by bringing DACA and the STAR Scholarship. If you get a B average in high school, you can go to any city college, regardless of your citizenship status, for free. I sponsor that resolution. DACA has been expanded. We've expanded DACA into resources, talking about resources. Me and I see our Alderman Rosas here in the Latino caucus worked very hard on providing the Legal Defense Fund. So actual resources, $1 million+ to help those undocumented get through the process. We're going to be pushing in the next budget to double and triple that. It's real for me. Yes, I knock on doors and talk to people as well, like my opponent does. But I've lived it through my family, and I would never give up on this, win or lose an election. Thank you.
Mr. LaSpada, do you support a fully elected school board or a hybrid model, or no one elected at all? And what would you do to bolster enrollment at schools in this neighborhood?
It's a great question. I fully support a fully elected school board. Right off the bat, I have campaigned for it, I have canvassed for it, I've been outside on election day on our elected school board referendums. But I also want to make sure that as alderman, I support grassroots candidates for that elected school board. It's our parents, our teachers, our students, our local school council members who should be populating that school board, because I would hate to see this be another office that can be bought out by the charter school movement. I will also say that what deeply frustrates me is how many deeply under-enrolled schools we have in the First Ward. Clementi School, a school of about 703 students, school that's built for about 2,900. Chase Elementary down the street from me, operating at 50% capacity. Wells High School, 28% capacity. This is unconscionable because it is affecting how these schools will live and thrive. So I have two roles here. It's to be an advocate and an organizer for those schools, to work comprehensively, collaboratively with the parents, with their teachers, with their students, so we have the foundational funding that those schools need, so that no school lacks a librarian, a nurse, social workers, that we're restoring arts and music programs in those schools, and then to be bringing the community into the school so that whether you have kids yet or not, you feel invested in the success of that school. That's the leadership that I hear parents and teachers calling for.
I'll start with the schools and then go to local school council. You know, it's an insult for you to even talk about Clemente School. Clemente School 5 years ago was way under-enrolled, 3 times less students. We had the commander there and police every morning and every night. We had guns, drugs, gangs. I'm 2 blocks from there. I see someone nodding their head in the back that may have been a student there. You remember. You guys all remember. And working with the community, I brought an international baccalaureate program into that school. I brought $3.5 million to redo that field. And now we've tripled the enrollment in the last 4 years. So don't cherry pick statistics. My turn, not yours. Don't cherry pick. Don't cherry pick the statistics. And if you disagree, talk to Abel De Jesus and Orlando and these folks here, Latinos that went to Clemente School.
Sir. Sir. Sir.
So the reality is that's how passionate people are about Clemente. Maybe it's a little bit overreaction, but the same at Wells where I put $1.5 million in, and the same at our other schools. They are doing the best that they can, and I'm providing the best resources that I can, period. And I've already written an op-ed supporting the local school council, elected a local school council 2 years ago. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
All right, it is just about time for closing statements. Alderman Moreno, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm used to going first. So when we sit at City Council, we have to sit in ward order. So I have to vote first, and we don't have a chance to hit a bell. We have to vote out loud. So I'm used to going first. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate the passion. Again, when I got into this, when I was a local school council member at Jose de Diego, which I actually think should be a requirement to be on the board. You have to serve a couple years, and then you can. That would be a qualification because we have vacancies at our local school council. So that's one thing I think we should bring in. The first ward, again, I might be repetitive for my opening statements, is one of the most socioeconomically diverse wards in our city. That's its strength, not its weakness. While times ago, when I was on that board, and I was on the board of Harbor Park Social Services, the Wicker Park Committee, and other things, we'd meet so-called progressive elected officials that would tell us a lot of good things, say a lot of stuff, but not a lot got done. And that's why I got into this game. I was a union printer. That's what family union printing company, not my family, but that's what I did. And I got into this because I wanted to actually have results. I wanted to come to you at this time and during the year and say, this is what we've actually done. Not what I'm thinking about, not what I want, not what we're going to have a meeting on, but what we've actually done and accomplished. And I'm very, very proud. I'm very, very proud of the many accomplishments. That's why the Chicago Federation of Labor has endorsed my candidacy. That's why one of the most progressive unions in the city, if not the state, SEIU, has endorsed my campaign. That's why the congressman who just left this area, Gutierrez, has endorsed my campaign. Not because of me, but because of the results that we've had in the first ward that impact families. If you've been here, again, if you've been here your lifetime, welcome, stay. If you've been here 15 years, 20 years, we want you here, please stay. If you just moved in to one of these buildings, we want you here. We want this ward to continue to grow and to be diverse and welcoming because that's what a good neighborhood is. That's what a good neighborhood is. And I will never, ever stop the fight every day for getting progressive results for the residents in our city. Our business districts are booming, our local businesses are thriving, and I'm just so proud and humbled to be your alderman, and I can't wait to go on your next 4 years with you and accomplish much and even more. Thank you for hosting. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It is a privilege to be able to address you, and it is a great disappointment to see the same lies and obfuscation of facts repeated by my opponent this evening. But we know some things to be true. We know that for every unit that's created affordable in a luxury development, we have lost 20 due to displacement and demolition and property taxes that have gotten out of control. We know that so, sir, I'm going to respect you, and I'm sure you will respect me. Because I owe those gentlemen the respect that they deserve. There is a culture of bullying and berating your opposition that is endemic in the First Ward. And I cannot stand for it. I cannot stand for videos of landlords in this community where I see them being told, you're going to come back begging to me on your knees. I can't stand these stories of people being disrespected. This pattern of bullying, this loss of affordability in our community, it is destructive. Ladies and gentlemen, it is destructive both to the diversity of our community and it is destructive to the public's faith in their city's government. So we are building a new movement in this ward. It's starting now, but it's going to continue far after this election. And it's for everyone in this room. Whether you have lived in this ward for 40 days, whether you've lived here for 40 years, regardless of what language you speak in your home or who you choose to love, we need your voice. We need your time, your talents, your resources. We want to make sure you have an affordable home, that you have a school you can put your faith in, that you feel safe when you're walking down your alley or you're walking down your sidewalk. So we want you to join the movement that we're creating for the first ward that we deserve to live in. I'd really encourage you, after tonight, go to www.daniel2019.com, check out our issues, learn more about my story, and think about how you want to participate in the future of this community. Because when we work together, we move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you to both of our candidates and everyone that's here. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alderman.